Under a sky that never quite decided what color it wanted to be, the world of Karseth breathed like a living thing. Its clouds were not water vapor, but fine metallic dust lifted by planetary tides and solar radiation, drifting in slow, luminous currents. They reflected the dying sun in sheets of copper and violet, turning the horizon into a wounded mirror. The air hummed faintly, not from wind, but from the vibration of ionized particles brushing against exposed stone and bone. Even silence here had texture. Elias Wren stood at the edge of a basalt ridge and watched the alien day expire. His suit's outer plating was scuffed and heat-scarred, its joints whining softly as servos compensated for age and accumulated damage. It was a civilian-grade exploration rig once, white, clean, optimistic. But now it bore the dull gray of survival repairs and the patchwork of a man who had learned to keep himself alive with whatever he could salvage. One shoulder plate carried the faded emblem of the Terran Survey Corps, half burned away. Another bore a crude alien sigil etched into it by hand, a mark of temporary truce that had long since expired. Elias leaned on his spear, a hybrid weapon of human alloy and Karsethi crystal, more for balance than defense. Gravity here was heavier than Earth's standard by a punishing margin, and his bones felt it. Every breath tasted faintly of iron and ozone. Every inhale reminded him how long he'd been away from home. Home. The word had become abstract. Behind him, the encampment smoldered. Low fires burned in pits carved into the rock, their blue-white flames fed by chemical bricks scavenged from a wrecked dropship months earlier. The silhouettes of massive structures rose around the camp. Stone towers grown, not built, shaped by biological processes that human engineers still struggle to understand. They curved inward like clenched fists around the valley, protective and threatening at once. This was not a place humans were meant to settle. And yet, he had settled here anyway. Because there had been no other choice. Elias Wren was 47 years old by Earth reckoning. On Karseth, with its elongated days and heavier gravity, his body felt closer to 60. His beard had gone streaked with gray, and the skin around his eyes carried the permanent squint of someone who lived beneath alien suns. He had buried friends here. He had buried hopes here too, quieter, more personal ones. He exhaled slowly and let his mind wander, as it often did at the end of the day. It had started as a joke. That was the part that still felt absurd even now. Months earlier, long before blood debts and alliances and unspoken laws, he had been sitting near a fire like this one, sharing a ration pack with a Karsethi mercenary named Vael Raka. She had 4 arms, each corded with dense muscle, her skin a deep slate blue patterned with natural armor ridges. Her lower pair of arms rested casually across her knees, while the upper pair cleaned a blade longer than Elias's torso. They had been talking about humans, about how fragile they looked, about how often they died. At some point, half delirious from exhaustion and dehydration, Elias had laughed and said, "Back on Earth, we joked that if a man survives long enough out here, he'll marry the plainest woman he can find. Beauty's a luxury. Survival's the prize." While Raka had stared at him with her golden faceted eyes. Then she had laughed, a deep, booming sound that echoed off the stone. "Plainest?" she had said. "You think that is what makes a mate worthy?" He had shrugged, trying to play it off. "It's a joke." Her laughter had faded. She leaned forward, all 4 hands resting on the ground, and tilted her head. "You would take my daughter then? Beat me first." The fire had crackled. The other mercenaries had gone quiet. Elias had thought she was joking too. She wasn't. The memory of that moment drifted back now, heavy with everything it had become since. A low horn sounded from the camp behind him. 3 pulses, deep and resonant, a Kar-Sethi signal. Evening muster. Elias turned away from the horizon and made his way down the ridge, boots grinding against volcanic gravel. Each step was measured, careful. The world punished carelessness swiftly. As he approached the central fire, the scale difference always struck him anew. The Kar-Sethi stood nearly 3 meters tall, their frames wide and dense, built for crushing gravity and constant conflict. Their forearms gave them an unsettling grace, 2 for balance and subtle motion, 2 for power and precision. Their armor was organic, grown rather than forged, fused seamlessly with their skin in places. Among them, Elias looked painfully small. And yet, when he entered the circle, conversations shifted. Eyes followed him. Respect, not warmth, but recognition, settled over the gathering like a second skin. He had earned that, not through strength, through endurance. Vael Raka stood near the largest fire, her posture relaxed but alert. Scars traced her upper arms, pale lines against dark skin. One of her tusk-like mandibular protrusions was cracked, an old injury from a war that predated human contact. She noticed him immediately. "You live another cycle," she said, not unkindly. "Seems I do," Elias replied. Her gaze lingered on him, measuring. "You are slower." He smiled thinly. "So are you." A corner of her mouth twitched, a Kar-Sethi approximation of amusement. Around them, the camp settled into its nightly rhythm. Weapons were checked, watch rotations assigned. Meat, something 6-legged and unfortunate, was distributed and roasted over the flames. The air filled with unfamiliar spices and the low murmur of alien voices. Elias sat on a stone slab near the edge of the firelight and removed his helmet. Cool air brushed his sweat-damp hair. The stars above Kar-Seth were sharper than any he'd known, pinpricks of light against an abyss so deep it felt like it might pull him upward and tear him apart. He ate slowly, savoring each bite despite the toughness of the meat. Protein was protein. Survival was survival. As he chewed, his thoughts drifted again, this time not to jokes or memories, but to the anomaly that had started everything. 3 days ago, while running a perimeter sweep alone, his suit had picked up a signal, not Kar-Sethi, not natural, human. At first, he'd thought it was a ghost echo, a fragment of an old transmission bouncing through ionized layers of the atmosphere. That happened sometimes. The universe was cluttered with the dead voices of extinct colonies and lost ships. But this signal had structure, a repeating pattern, a compression algorithm he recognized, Terran origin, and impossibly recent. The last confirmed human transmission from this sector had been over 70 years ago. That night, after the camp slept, Elias lay awake staring at the sky, the signal data replaying over and over in his mind. If it was real, if there was another human presence here, it changed everything. Hope was dangerous. Hope got people killed. At dawn, he made his decision. He would investigate alone. The journey began before the sun had fully risen, when Kar-Seth's surface was still cool enough to touch without gloves. Elias left the camp quietly, leaving behind a single marker stone. A Kar-Sethi sign meaning, "I walk my own path." Vael Raka found it an hour later. She said nothing, but she watched the horizon long after he vanished into the dust. Elias followed the signal across terrain that looked as though a god had shattered a planet and forgotten to finish the job. Jagged spires of obsidian jutted from the ground like broken teeth. Vast plains of metallic sand shifted beneath his feet, threatening to swallow him if he stood still too long. Gravity wells formed unexpectedly near dense mineral clusters, dragging at his limbs and distorting his sense of balance. His suit compensated as best it could, internal gyros whining. Power levels dipped steadily. He rationed movement, breath, thought. As he walked, memories surfaced unbidden. Earth, blue skies, rain that smelled like life instead of rust. The colony ship Ardent Promise breaking apart during atmospheric entry, alarms screaming, gravity failing. The look on Captain Havel's face when he sealed the bulkhead and shoved Elias into an escape pod. Live, she had said. That's an order. He had lived. Everyone else hadn't. By the time the terrain shifted, basalt giving way to smoother stone, unnaturally uniform, his legs trembled from exhaustion. The signal grew stronger, clearer, guiding him like a whisper. Then he saw it. The structure rose from the plain like a wound in the world. At first glance, it looked Karsethi, organic curves, fused stone. But the geometry was wrong. Too precise, too symmetrical, human in its insistence on order. A dome half buried, its surface scarred by centuries of dust storms, but intact. No growth, no decay. A human bunker. Elias stood there for a long time, afraid to breathe. Finally he approached. The entrance recognized him. Lights flickered on, white, sterile, painfully familiar. A hatch slid open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The air inside was clean. He crossed the threshold and felt something in his chest crack open. The bunker was a time capsule. Hallways lined with panels bearing faded Terran insignia. Storage rooms filled with equipment sealed and preserved. Personal items scattered where people had left them. Mugs, data slates, a child's toy drifting in low gravity. No bodies, no signs of struggle. The silence was overwhelming. He moved slowly, reverently, as though afraid to disturb ghosts. In the central chamber, a holographic terminal flickered to life. A woman appeared, older than he'd expected, her hair silver, her eyes sharp. Log entry, she said. Dr. Mara Ionescu, Xenobiology Division. Her image wavered. We were not alone, she continued. The Karsethi were watching us long before first contact. We thought ourselves explorers. We were specimens. Elias felt cold. The experiment, Mara said, voice heavy, was survival, adaptation. They wanted to know if humans could endure Karseth long term. Not with suits, not with terraforming, but by becoming something else. The logs detailed years of research, genetic augmentation, neural reinforcement, attempts to integrate Karsethi biological structures with human DNA. Most subjects died. Some changed. The final log played automatically. Mara's face was tired, peaceful. They are coming, she said, but not as conquerors, as kin. If anyone finds this, know that humanity does not end here. It evolves. The hologram faded. A presence stirred behind him. Elias turned, spear raised. She stood in the shadows, tall, four-armed, her features unmistakably Karsethi, yet softened. Her eyes were human brown. I wondered when you would arrive, she said, in flawless Terran common. His breath caught. I am Kailira, she continued, daughter of Vaelraka. The world tilted. The twist unraveled slowly, painfully. Kailira was the result of the experiment. Human and Karsethi merged, not as an abomination, but as a bridge. She had been raised in secrecy, hidden from both species until she could choose her path. I laughed when my mother challenged you, Kailira said quietly, not because it was a joke, but because I already knew you would come. They spoke for hours about humanity's fear of change, about the Karsethi's reverence for strength earned through suffering, about loneliness that spanned species. Kailira offered him a choice: remain human, return to the camp, age, die, or join her. The transformation would be irreversible: enhanced bones, altered physiology, a lifespan measured in centuries. a place between worlds. Elias closed his eyes. He thought of Earth, of Captain Havel, of the joke he'd made, careless and human and small. When he opened his eyes, his voice was steady. I'm tired of surviving alone. The process was agony and revelation intertwined. His senses exploded, colors deepened, sounds gained layers. His body reshaped itself from the inside out, pain giving way to strength, unlike anything he'd known. When it ended, he stood taller, not Karsethi tall, but no longer fragile. Outside, the sky shifted. A new signal lit the horizon. Ships approaching, human and alien signatures interwoven. Elias stepped out of the bunker beside Kaelira, his new perception stretching into the stars. The universe had not ended humanity. It had asked it a question. And finally, humanity had answered, not with conquest, but with becoming.